Hello everybody, this is chapter 14, Physical Development in Adolescence, and hopefully you already went on Blackboard and did the puberty pre-test, just kind of seeing what you already know about puberty. Then after this PowerPoint, you'll go on and complete the post-test. So if you haven't done the pre-test, go ahead and press pause and go back and complete the pre-test. Okay, so I had a lot of nice colorful charts, but unfortunately in the format of this movie it made me simplify them. So the phases of adolescence are broken down into 3 phases: early, middle, and late. Early adolescence is when most children start to go through those rapid pubertal changes. So, dramatic weight gain, height gain, maybe a change in appearance. By middle adolescence, 14 to 16, their puberty is almost complete, and 16 to 18 is late adolescence when they start to achieve their adult-like appearance and assume their adult-like roles. So we're going to also talk about early matures versus late matures and how that affects both boys and girls. So typically hormonal changes start in most children at around 8 or 9 years old. For girls, estrogen start to be released, and for boys, testosterone. So again, that's getting them ready to be reproductive. The body also goes through a lot of changes. So the growth spurt happens, a rapid gain in height and weight, and usually 10 to 11 inches and 50 to 75 pounds can be typical for a developing child. So again, that can be dramatic changes made to your body in a short amount of time. Now, hormonal influences, we see that they, whether it's the ovaries or the testes, but in men and women, we see growth spurts, we see gains in bone density, but for girls, we see addition of body fat, so this is girls here, and boys, muscle growth, broadening of the shoulders, maturation of the male reproductive organs, girls beginning of the menstrual cycle, development of breasts, broadening of the hips, addition of body fat. Sex differences, so boys start the growth spurt at around 12 and a half, while girls start at about 10. Proportions, again, for boys the shoulders are what broadens, and for girls it's the hips. The boys also have longer legs. And then the muscle and fat makeup, boys gain more muscle and aerobic efficiency, while girls gain more fat. So that's a typical developmental occurrence in both boys and girls. Now, consequences of the timing of puberty, so early versus late. Now, again, there's differences in both boys and girls. So boys who mature early tend to be popular, confident, and have a positive body image. But girls tend to be unpopular, withdrawn, and have a negative body image and a more defiant behavior, many times actually acting out sexually. So the boys kind of take on this adult-like role at an early age and kind of step up to the plate and take it as a leader, whereas girls many times develop very early and have a hard time understanding the attention and everything that comes with that. Now, late maturing boys, it's the opposite. They're the ones that are unpopular. They're anxious, talkative, attention-seeking, most likely because they've waited so many years to kind of catch up to everyone. They kind of overdo it in social situations. But they have a negative body image. Again, they've been waiting for this maturing, and many times late matures can have a higher fat density. Now, girls, popular, sociable, positive body image. Again, their body kind of matured at the same rate that their mind did, and they were able to kind of take on that adult-like appearance and not be overwhelmed by that. So that's some differences we see in both early maturing and late maturing boys and girls. Now, differences in timing of puberty individually. Again, you have to look at your parents. Typically you develop around the same time that your mom did. Nutrition and exercise. Are you an athlete who really limits your calories, or you're thinking of like dancers and things like that? That can lead to delayed menstruation, things like that. They also find, the timing of puberty takes into account where you live, your income level, what ethnic group you are part of, and whether or not there's a secular trend or a change over time in the area where you live. So a lot of different factors are taken into account when looking at individually when we go through puberty. Now, sexual maturation of the primary sexual characteristics are our reproductive organs. So for girls, they get their first period, which is called menarche, and for boys, spermarchy, so sperm is developed. Secondary sexual characteristics are visible parts of the body that signal that someone is going through puberty. So for girls, it's breasts, for boys, it's facial hair and their voice changing, and for both, it's underarm and pubic hair. Now, they've seen an actual recent decline in sexual activity. They've even linked it to things like MTV's Teen Mom and 16 and Pregnant, that less teens are getting pregnant due to seeing the extreme hardship of being pregnant and having a child, which is leading to less, a decline in sexual activity. But there's still a high percentage of sexually active youths, so many times males will start earlier than females. They typically have few partners, but they do find American youths begin at a younger age, and many times due to the media, peers, there's a lot of different factors. So personally, again, maybe they went through puberty early. Maybe they already tend to violate norms, so, being sexually active at a young age is not out of the norm for them. They even find little religious involvement. Many times there's a correlation with children who are actively sexually involved. Now, family. Single, step-parent, large family, basically all of those leading to weak monitoring, supervision is very important. Supervision. Very important when even dealing with adolescents. Again, they're almost adults, but they're at that key age where they can really make choices that can affect their whole life. So we want to make sure to keep communication open and make sure to monitor children or adolescents. Peers, maybe their peers are sexually active, or they have older siblings or even younger siblings who are active, so that can lead to them choosing to be active. And many times we see educationally poor school performance, low educational goals, but not always. But this is, again, many times several factors we see of sexually active adolescents. Reporting intercourse, we see grade 9, 10, 11, 12. It increases every year. And girls, actually, they see a increase in grade 12 over boys. So that's something interesting. But again, over 50% by grade 11 have already had sexual intercourse. Pregnancy, almost 1 million teen pregnancies every year. 25,000 with girls under the age of 15. So again, that's why so many lead to having an abortion. Almost half of teen pregnancies end in an abortion. Again, because it can be so overwhelming at that age, not having family support, not having maybe the support of the teen dad, lack of money, lack of resources, lack of hope, etc. So there is a video clip on teen pregnancy that you guys will be looking at on Blackboard. Help for teen pregnancy, we need more effective sex education, how to handle it. The difference between prevention and intervention is prevention, it hasn't happened yet. Intervention, it's already happened. So many times we're already dealing with teen pregnancy. So here we want to give them skills, messages, make sure it lasts long enough, give them the info and access to contraceptives they need, and encourage school involvement. Now again, if they've already been sexually active and have led to being teenage pregnant, talk about health care, stay in school, what happens once they're out of school, how do they be a parent, how are they going to get help with childcare, and do they have adult mentors, and of course father support. They find children will have more benefits if they can have both parents present. Now, sexual orientation, about 4% of young people identify as being lesbian, gay, or bisexual. It's unknown who experience the same-sex attraction but don't come out, like how many number of children. but they think hereditary information is an important contributor to homosexuality, but stereotypes are continue. We don't really know why would some people be heterosexual and some homosexual and some bisexual. It just happens, right? It's kind of random, but some find a link to more biological reasons, more environmental reasons. There's really been no clear connection, except most children say that's the way they've always been. Now, many times they start to feel different at around 6 to 12 years old, when all children are starting to be interested in, what they're interested in. Confusion, typically 11 to 15 for boys and 14 to 15 for girls. And self-acceptance, timing varies. Some may never accept their sexual orientation, while others may accept it at an early age. And, in either way, they go through different experiences, different hardships. So we always want to be supportive and understand that that's their situation. They're going to be ready when they are ready. Now, online we have a video about HPV that I'd like you guys to look at, but, preventing sexually transmitted diseases, especially for young children and adolescents, is know your partner well. Maintain faithfulness, don't use drugs, don't use alcohol when that'll lead to maybe making choices that we don't necessarily want to make. Use condoms, use vaginal contraceptives, don't have sex with infected people, and if you get an STD, the best thing is to inform all your partners, because again, they can get treated and hopefully stop it from being spread to someone else. So HPV, like I said, please go on and watch the video. Now let's talk a little bit about brain development. So white matter starts to increase and gray matter decreases. So pruning, that synaptic pruning continues. We keep losing those connections. But something called myelination speeds up and it improves our cognition. So our neurons are now more sensitive to those messages being passed. And experiences are more intense, and many times we start to seek those experiences when we experience something new, because, by 14, 15 years old, we've had many similar experiences. And when we experience something new, something exciting, the brain triggers that response. So many times, adolescents will start to become seeking of that feeling. And many times drugs, alcohol, or other kind of adventurous activities will lead to receiving that feeling. Now, myelination that I was talking about in the previous slide is kind of a coding. And they did a study in the year 2000 of about 100 children and adolescents, and they found that age-related increase in white matter. So the matter was basically, they were saying that during late childhood and adolescence, they help support motor and speech functions. We need these fibers, so we have to continue to feed our brain, positive things in adolescence, so that myelin can continue to promote things like attention and problem solving, concentration, comprehension, all those things that we need. So again, like I was saying, nutrition, food for the brain, our calorie needs increase. We're getting taller, we're getting larger, bigger, we need more calories, but poor food choices are common. Again, many times in adolescence, we're allowed to make more choices on our own, so we'll tend to have less fruits, vegetables, milk, and even no breakfast, more soda, more fast foods, more foods that are easily acceptable, and that can lead to many deficiencies in iron, calcium, different vitamins, and many will try certain diets or being vegetarian just because it's something to try out. They're trying to get to understand who they are. So we, as parents and caregivers, want to make sure that they're maintaining their proper nutritional intake. Eating disorders are also common. Anorexia and bulimia, and I'm sorry it's cut off here with a different picture, but about 1% of adolescents are affected with anorexia, and 2 to 4%, so more, are affected with bulimia. Now, anorexia is increasing exercise, starving oneself out of fear of getting fat. They do find that it's an abnormality in brain functioning. It's more of a controlling thing within our brain than actually a physical, illness or anything like that. And so anorexia is increasing exercise, decreasing calories. Bulimia is the same thing. So the strict dieting, excessive exercise, but they will follow that by binging and purging on a lot of calories at once. Binging on them, maybe 2,000 to 5,000 calories, and then purging them through laxatives, through vomiting, through whatever way necessary. And again, that leads to feelings of guilt, but they find the best treatment is therapy. Many times even needing to go into a rehabilitation center and getting education about nutrition, but also getting deep into what are the reasons behind this. When did it start? Why did it start? And trying to get to the root of the issue. Now, sleep habits, we talked about that early on with young children, but in adolescence, they're still the same as in middle childhood. They still need about 9 hours of sleep. But adolescents have more activities, wanting to stay up later, more homework many times. So biological changes and social habits may lead them to going to bed later. So what happens when we're sleep deprived? Low achievement, mood problems, more high-risk behaviors. So again, as parents and caregivers, we have to get on top of our adolescents about, are you getting enough sleep? Getting to sleep, helping organize their time. So a little bit about substance use. There's varying patterns from minimal experimenters to using and abusing. And again, many times it's use to abuse occurs because that abuse is leading to something is happening within the brain that the adolescent continues to seek. It's leading them to a feeling of feeling good. And many times when we've had rough childhoods, you go through adolescence, you try drugs or alcohol, and finally you reach that state of feeling happy. Well, that's really dangerous, right? Because needing a substance to be happy is not self-fulfilling. So it is widespread over adolescence. Looking at tobacco, alcohol, marijuana, and other illegal drugs. Alcohol is over 60% of 10th graders are using alcohol in Europe, but it's less here because, again, it's not as widely accepted. But marijuana, we're seeing an increase, especially with it becoming more legal in certain areas, and tobacco is still at a high range. So how do we prevent and treat? Parenting, monitoring their activities. What are they doing on a daily basis? Teach them skills for resisting those situations when they're because again, they're always going to be put into situations where they have to make a good choice. Reduce the acceptability of taking drugs. Make sure to emphasize with them what are the health and safety risks. And many times it works by getting students to commit to not using drugs, signing a contract, other things, but other times it's consistency. And again, long-term effectiveness, reminding, checking in, communication, monitoring, those are all effective strategies to dealing with adolescence. And that's the end of the chapter, so make sure to go back to Blackboard. Thank you.